and welcome to another Twinmotion tutorial video by Jonathan Reeves and George Wayne from Innovative Vectorworks BIM. This is part 2. We're going to be focusing on adding more detail to our model. Now if you haven't checked out part 1.1 and part 1.2 already, please do, and have a look at the trailer if you're interested to see the final output. So in this part of the tutorial we're going to be looking at kind of working out the actual architectural side of the model, adding things like animals as well to give the model a bit more life, and also things like atmospherics where we look at the waterfall, the fog, the mist, the fire, those kind of things, before finishing off with things like decals as well. So at the moment you can see we're just working on the stonework of the project. Now again, Twinmotion ships with a really good library of materials. You can basically access these by dragging and dropping them straight from the materials palette into the model. Immediately in real time you get a preview, as you can see, and then you can adjust the hue and the saturation and the colour of all of these materials and objects as well. Now it's quite simple and straightforward if you do need to actually make your own custom textures as well, and if you look at some of my other tutorial videos we'll show you how to do that. So we're just working on the concrete here, you can see, for the cantilevered balconies that Frank Lloyd Wright designed overhanging the river there. That was one of the major features of this design, and you know, the element that everybody recognises and loves about this particular project. You can see we can change the bump mapping and the metallicness as we kind of want to and just slide through, and we're just having a look now at the glazing. So with the glazing, a couple of tricks are, there's a couple of different types of glazing. We've got the reflective glazing or the two-sided glass. You can adjust the opacity as needed to get some reflections. And a really good tip there is also to add some refraction probes later. Now we'll be doing that in part 3, so do come back and check out that tutorial when it's available. So we're just kind of walking through the model here, just kind of trying to search for the textures you need. As a good little tip actually, if you do type into the search dialog above the library, that will enable you to actually find those textures a little bit more rapidly as long as you know what you're looking for. So here you can see we're actually adding some decals to the model. Now the great thing with decals is they're essentially sort of flat surfaces rather than 3D models, and they're great for things like adding a bit of weathering, cracking or texturing, and to make the model look a little bit more natural. Adding some decals here is a great idea, but do make sure you slide the opacity down just to kind of make sure they blend in to the model itself. And as you can see, this kind of just gives it that slightly worn and weathered effect that, you know, would be more natural in this kind of environment. It's one of the problems with CGI is that things can often look way too perfect. So, you know, dirtying things up a little bit, adding a bit of staining or cracking to these concrete balconies, you know, these would weather during the winter and so on when it's damp. You would find that, you know, they wouldn't be perfectly clean, especially after a few years. So those balconies are looking really nice now. A lot more realistic as we've started to add the decals. So we're just going to carry on with this for a bit. I'll let you sit back and relax and watch the video as we do this bit, and I'll come back in a while. So you can see we're just working on the underside of the cantilevered balconies. We're just adding quite a bit of staining and a bit more cracking to this area. This would definitely be an area that, you know, after a little bit of weathering over the years would certainly not look too pristine. And I think you'll agree, it really kind of just adds a certain level of realism to the model. And it kind of just takes away that, you know, perfect CGI look that perhaps in the old days it was so hard to achieve this kind of thing, so it was easier just to kind of, you know, render out the texture as it was. That's one of the beauties we find with Twinmotion. Because of the speed of working and the real-time updates and previews, it's just a joy to use. I mean, in many ways it's kind of like 3D Photoshop, and you know, you can play around with it to your heart's content. You can undo things. It's easy to organise the effects in groups in the manager if needed. And you know, you can kind of just keep working on it until it kind of gets that feel that you're looking for. So you can adjust, as I say, the size, the opacity. There's also some other settings, but you can see it's really easy to work on this area and add a lot of nice effective detail to the model. Yeah, something we've really discovered that really adds to the realism, and it's kind of quite satisfying to do. So yeah, brilliant guys. We're going to move on now to the next part of the tutorial. We're going to start to look at how to create that amazing waterfall. So this involves using the particles from the library, and if you get into the particles section, you'll notice there's some really cool stuff like fires. There's small and large fires. There's some things like smoke and fog, and we're going to use some of those later. But at the moment we're just dragging in the waterfall. So the waterfall object, just like any other object in Twinmotion, can be adjusted in terms of position, rotation, scale and size. So it helps to kind of scale it a little bit to make it a little bit more horizontal, rather than the kind of classic sort of waterfall object. You can see as we copy these around, it's starting to look pretty good. So holding shift down is the tip to basically make a copy of the object when you're actually trying to duplicate it. And you can actually sort of put multiple duplicates in, but we're just kind of doing it one by one, and we find that changing view is quite important in Twinmotion and software like this, so that you can actually kind of really accurately gauge in the third dimension where these things are, because it can be a little bit sort of an illusion on a 2D screen to place things in a 3D world. So as long as you kind of move to maybe a sort of more plan type view, something a bit higher up, you can kind of quickly see exactly where that would be. Now we're trying to place these waterfall objects slightly randomly, so it gives that natural appearance we're looking for. And you know, I think you'll agree, you know, the waterfall on Falling Water is probably one of the key elements of the design and the site. Frank Lloyd Wright wanted to kind of make the most of the views over the river, and obviously the falling waterfall here is a very critical part of that. So yeah, we're so pleased that we could recreate this using Twinmotion. I've used so many other bits of 3D software in my career, and I know how hard this would be to achieve in other bits of software. You know, potentially animating things like this in Cinema 4D is possible, but it's quite tricky, and Twinmotion makes this kind of work really straightforward and really easy, and very enjoyable and satisfying at the same time. Now, we said before, to really get the best from Twinmotion, it is good to have a nice graphics card. We've got a RTX 2080 Ti. It's probably one of the best graphics cards we can get hold of, and we just got a brand new PC, an AMD 12 core, and it's really nice to have it on a fast machine. But it also, you know, I would say if you haven't got quite that kind of level of budget, we've been using Twinmotion on the Mac platform for quite some time. I've got a laptop and it works fine on that in the lower settings. Also, we do have an eGPU for the laptop, which also helps in that you can crank up the settings to a much higher level. So if you do like working with the sort of highest level of quality, personally I love this because it makes it feel like you're actually working on the final image almost, the final level of quality. You know, the actual rendered quality you get once you click the export will be even higher than this, but the preview really is absolutely stunning, and it makes it sort of super satisfying to kind of gauge where you are. The other thing is about having a good GPU is everything is very fluid and smooth, and we do find it's ultra reliable. We hardly ever get any crashes, even on a really complicated model like this. I've been asked this question a few times. The model itself came in about 350 megabytes. So it's kind of good, a good size, but it's not crazy by the standards of the level of detail that we had in the model, with things like all the rocks, vegetation and the trees and so on. And you can see that actually 350 megabytes for a project of this sort of complexity is really not bad. Now I'm going to kind of let you sit back and relax and enjoy the creation of this wonderful waterfall, such a key element of the project that we thoroughly enjoyed doing, and I would really encourage you to have a go with this. So the waterfall's looking really beautiful now. We're now going to work on the other aspects of the particles and detail. So we're going to go into the particles palette, and we're going to look for some of the water drops. You can see we're able to add these into the water, and you get a lovely detail where the water drops in of some nice ripples. A really lovely effect that's quite subtle, but does make quite a difference, as you can see here. So we're just going to move those a little bit more under the waterfall itself, and those dripping water effects will make quite a big difference to the detail. Just make it look a lot more realistic as the water drops down from the waterfall and hits the surface of the water itself. So yeah, it's looking really cool. We'll kind of keep working on this now, and let's come back in a moment. So you can see we've been working on these water drops for a little while. They've made quite a nice impact. When you're looking close up, you'll see the detail. You can see the little ripples in the water, just where it would be dropping down. It looks a lot more natural. So this waterfall is looking really fantastic. We're really pleased with the way this has come on now. So one of the other things that we're going to add are some more particle effects, some banks of fog. And this just gives a nice impression of sort of some water vapour just coming off that water as it falls down over the waterfall. And this kind of gives a nice natural look. And also, water vapour and fog, things like this, these are pretty hard to represent in other 3D software. Twinmotion makes this pretty straightforward and easy, and you can see the fog is just sort of moving very slightly. It's kind of subtle, but it does look beautiful. So we're just going to carry on adding a bit more detail to this particular scene, because this is quite a critical view looking up at the property. From the miscellaneous library, you can see we can add things like dead trees, leaves, logs, that kind of thing. This kind of detritus that would be often hanging around on this kind of environment is really useful actually. So having those libraries really helps. So yeah, we're going to kind of just keep working on the scene a little bit more. Let's add a few more sort of dead trees into the bank there. These are subtle, but they'll make quite a bit of difference as we're moving through. So now we're going to bring the model to life and add some animals. I really love things like the butterflies and the birds and the fish. When you drop the fish in, you can immediately bring that river to life. We're just kind of moving them down below the water, as you can see. But yeah, they look so cool. Having something moving in the water itself just adds an extra level of realism, and it's pretty quick and pretty easy to do. Just make sure you mix up the different types of fish. It'd be nice to have a few more libraries, but it's a good start, I think. this does make quite a nice difference. Now, the other thing that really helps, I think, is having birds and things like that flying around in the air. This, really kind of catches the attention of the eye, and it sort of just adds a certain sense of realism to the animations and the images we're going to create. So let's move on to another really important aspect of making this visual come to life. We're going to add some humans and people to the image. There's two types of humans. There's the posable, movable ones, and you can see there's also some cutouts. Now the cutouts do look okay in a long distance away, but they kind of don't really move around and they're not three-dimensional. So it's much nicer to add the real humans. One of the lovely things with Twinmotion is you can not only pose them, so make them sit and stand and talk and so on, you can actually change their clothing as well. So as you click and add multiple people, it will always add a different version of that person, fairly randomly. So yeah, that's pretty cool. And when you drag and drop them, they'll obviously apply to the surface you drag them onto. Now, the trick here is to get a little bit of life into the model, but don't overdo it. And try to kind of put the people in a place where you're not going to get maybe too close to them. However, we did a trailer on Twinmotion 2020 just today, and the new people coming in the future versions do look really, really awesome, more realistic. So, I do think that's going to add a lot more capability to the people side. It's probably one of the criticisms I would have of Twinmotion at the moment. Maybe the people are not quite as good as they could be. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the improvements coming in Twinmotion 2020. Now, if you haven't seen the trailer, check that out. And by the time you watch this video in the new year, hopefully we're going to have those amazing new people from AXYZ. So yeah, let's just get back to the model. We're just kind of looking at adding some furniture. There's a really good range of furniture items in the library. And one of the really cool things that you can do is not only kind of bring these in and modify things like the materials, you can actually kind of get into the group itself and sort of move things around. Like if you wanted to move those plates or bottles around, you could. Let's just keep working on the model a little bit. Sometimes a little bit experimental, just to see if you like the idea of something. You've got to try it out. That's kind of what we're doing at the moment. One of the big aspects to Twinmotion though is the ability to build your own custom user library, and this is definitely something that you want to get into. Now, we're not going to be doing that in this tutorial, but if you do look at my other videos on the Innovative Vectorworks BIM YouTube, you will find there's plenty there that talk about how to create custom content and sort of your own user libraries as well. So I'm going to let you sit back and relax and just enjoy the video while we kind of populate this room with some furniture and bring a bit of life to the inside of the model. So now we're going to add some of the fire to the fireplace in Twinmotion. There's a big fire and a small fire, and they look really, really superb. As you can see, they had a lovely bit of detail. So definitely have a play with those. It is quite safe to play. We're just basically going to carry on working on the model now, adding lots of detail. Things like the decorations are nice, the wall fixtures and all those kind of books and stuff. You'll see we can also change the coloration of some of the furniture. So we've gone for a more contemporary white on these kind of little sofas and so on. Yeah, we can just match those colours quite easily, and we can move them as groups as well. Bringing in people is nice, and we can just kind of pose them and get them to sit down and change what they're wearing and so on as well. So that really adds to the model. So that brings this part 2 to a close, and we really hope you've enjoyed watching. Please do like and subscribe to the channel, and look out for part 3 coming shortly before Christmas. Thanks for watching, everybody. Bye bye.